I'm Dennis Buckmaster, and the title of this webinar is Put Your Smartphone to Work More Smartly. So I actually looked up the definition of smartly, and it mentioned something about quick-witted intelligence. And then I looked up wit, and that means mental sharpness and inventiveness. And that really does capture what I want to cover in this webinar, which is quick, intelligent, inventive uses of that thing that you always carry with you. So let's also put it in the context of Internet of Things. Well, your smartphone is a thing, and it's generally on the internet. It's the most ubiquitous thing on the internet that most of us have. So let's take advantage of just that. So we will go fast today. Here's the list of what I want to cover. And there'll be some more detailed videos on a couple of these things like Trello and Google Sheets. But that's my list, and you'll notice that big red graphic over there on the right. That is my favorite price, and I'm assuming maybe it's yours too. So we will cover quite a lot, and I hope that in this brief webinar, you'll have ideas to improve your communications and your effectiveness with yourself and with the people that you work with, or even outside of work, be able to put these things to use. So let's start with Trello. Trello is a back office whiteboard of sorts. It's taking the place of the notebook that you might have once in a while kept on the dashboard of the combine or the pickup truck, but it's always in the wrong place. And so here is a way to always have these things with you and always share them with trusted people. So the first thing that you should know about Trello is that its organization is different than other cloud storages that you might be familiar with. Most things like Google Drive, Box, Dropbox, OneDrive, etc., iCloud, they have a structure that's folder, 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 file. So you organize things in folders, and then you put subfolders, and then you put files in there. Trello works differently in that it starts at the organization. The organization might be just you. It might be you and your family, if you trust your family. It might be you and your coworkers. Then, under the organization, there are boards. You share those boards at the same level as the organization, but you can also share different boards with different people in the organization differently. For example, let's suppose you have a business and there are two chiefs, you and one other. Well, then you might share all of the boards with each other. But if there are boards that are more of activity level within the business, well, then you might only share those with the workers that you have. Organization board. On the board, go lists. Lists of things to do, list of equipment that you have, list of facilities that you maintain, list of people that work for you. And then on each list go cards. On that card can be text, can be photos, can be actual files, spreadsheets, documents, other things. You can have hyperlinks, pointers to other things in your realm or in the public realm. So links to YouTube videos or your Google Sheet storage, that sort of thing. So that's the organization of Trello. It's organization, board, list, and card. So if you can imagine sort of the back office of an agribusiness where there's a whiteboard, but it's only located in one place. And if someone needed to have access to that through the day, well, I suppose they could take a picture of it before they left the office. But then if it changed, they wouldn't have it. In this case, it's a virtual whiteboard that everyone has access to all the time. So Trello does work in a browser. That means it works on Windows machines, Macs. You can use it in an app on either an iOS or an Android phone. So you can either use it on a tablet or a computer or a phone, either in the browser or in apps. So there is a link there. We'll provide that also at the end to a more detailed explanation of Trello. But ponder this. With a free account, you can have unlimited personal cards, unlimited personal boards, unlimited lists. The limits are that you can only have 10 megabyte files as attachments, and you can only have 10 team boards. But remember, the board has unlimited lists. So better than a slideshow of me saying what it can do, let's switch and actually have a demonstration of Trello in action. So here's my Trello board for Acme Farms. You can see I have several lists on here, things like things you could use Trello to do, an equipment list, parts and supplies needed, to do things, weekly tasks that might be shared, and then, because he's such a wonderful worker, special list for Purdue Pete. So again, just to make a very quick demo, first thing I want to do is just add a list. So here we go, add another list, and we'll call this one grain bins. And then once I have the list, I can add a card, and I might put big bin number 1. I've got a card. Now I might, if I was actually there, I could take a picture of that grain bin and put it there. But there's an add a card. So I have lists and cards in my organization called Acme Farms, and you notice I can scroll back and forth because I now have lots of lists here. But I might take some parts and supplies needed, these small town supplies, and put that over here. It doesn't make sense, but I could just move it over to the weekly tasks. And now every week someone should check, what do we need there? So it's just a matter of click and drag a card, move it to somewhere, and instantly it's there. So that's the PC view, kind of like a nice big screen. You can see what's going on in your Trello board. Here's the view of my Acme Farms board on Trello on my Android phone. You can see that list, and because of the smaller phone view, I sort of have to swipe to the left in order to see the different lists. But they're all there, including the grain bins list. And so I could easily move that grain bins list from where it is to somewhere else to put it in a different order if I wished, like that. So let's go to the parts and supplies needed. I'm going to add a card because I have a machine here that's got a bad bearing. And so I'm going to add a card. I'm going to name the card Big Yellow Store, Yellow Equipment Store. And you can see with my fingers I didn't type big very well. There we go. So I've added the card. Now let's go to that card, and I'm going to add a comment. Need wheel bearing for header. And hit the checkbox there to add that comment. But that doesn't communicate very much. What would communicate a lot is to actually have the attachment. So I'm going to take an attachment. I'm going to take a photo with my phone right here. And I happen to have here on my desk. But let's suppose the bearing that we need is in the wheel on the header, right? So there's the machine. And on a different day, I probably took a picture of the serial number of that machine and put it in the equipment list. But today, I'm just taking a picture of the machine itself, and then I'm going to take another picture of, oops, not from Dropbox, no, go to the attachment, take a photo, and specifically get right into, this is the bearing on the header that we're talking about. That's bad, okay? So the combination of, no, I don't have a serial number on my toy here, but the combination of the serial number, and that's the machine, that's exactly the wheel bearing I'm talking about, then regardless of who goes to that equipment store, the Big Yellow Equipment Store, they would know exactly to get just that. All right, and let's suppose that on a different day, so just to show, here are the weekly tasks, and here are the things to do. Let's suppose Pete prepped the planter. I just take that over there and put it on Pete's done list. Go back here, Pete also replaced the chisel plow tips. And I also did, this is how easy it is to take care of things. Now, to finish the webinar preparation, that's on me, and I don't have a finished list, so I'm just going to have to deal with that. This is the phone view of Trello. Next up, is Google Sheets. I suppose many of you use Google Sheets in lots of different ways. And we will actually be covering Google Sheets in a couple other webinars. One more focused on programming in spreadsheets, and then another one related to data analysis. But today, I just want to throw out the idea that this huge matrix of cells, A1, B1, A2, B2, that big matrix is just waiting for you to put information in that you might share or you might just keep to yourself. So you can put text, numbers, formulas, hyperlinks, comments, and notes. I do want to give a demonstration because the sharing is very important. It's important that you share wisely. You can share it so that nobody can see it, only you have access. You can share it to a controlled group by email address, allowing them to only see it or actually to edit it. You can make it so that anyone could read it or anyone could edit it. Probably in your case, you wouldn't do that. In our case, in academia, sometimes we would do that. And you'll see there, it's rarely a size issue that you're going to have so much information that it doesn't fit into a Google Sheet. Of course, real data wouldn't fit there. But if you're just taking notes, of course, it's big enough. And also, remember the favorite price. So also, Google Sheets works in a browser, sheets.google.com, or in apps on devices, all platforms, Windows, iOS, and Android. And so, again, better than me talking about what it can do, let's see an actual demonstration of Google Sheets, both in phone view as well as computer or PC view. So this is just a demonstration of what Sheets looks like on my Android phone. So once I'm in Sheets, it sort of lists them there, and I can choose the one. I chose the one at the top left, which is sharing carefully. You see there, I've got one sheet at the bottom. It's labeled silage loads, and there's some information tallied there in the top left, sort of cells A1 through B6 or so. But if I wanted to add a sheet at the bottom, there's a little plus sign. I can add a sheet. I can touch the drop-down arrow, rename it. Maybe on this sheet, I will just tally my manure loads. I've got two sheets in that same workbook. So let's go back to silage. And here we are on a different date, so I'll just enter the date, 9/28/20. And then I could start to tally, well, when did loads go in there? So I can either type it in. If you notice there, I've got text or formula or anything, so I can, depends on which keyboard I bring up, I can enter in whatever goes there. But let's suppose the first one goes in at 10 in the morning. A little later, someone else is in here, and they put 10:22 is the next load, etc. And I'm just tallying that in Google Sheets. So another thing I can do is actually insert a photo in Google Sheets. So that's on the top right menu, 3 dots, and I can, oh, no, it's not there. We hit the plus sign, there it is, and I can insert an image. And I'm in my office, so I don't have exciting things to take a picture of. But I'll try this image over cells from the camera. And here's a nice picture of an apple. And it's actually going to go in. Of course, this wouldn't be too useful on a spreadsheet, but if I was out in the field, I could take a picture of the wagons or whatever. Picture of the field, whatever, and then just document it. So there is the photo actually in the sheet itself. So that's a little quick view of what does Google Sheets look like in the phone. And of course you can zoom and pan around the spreadsheet, zoom way out, get the bigger picture, zoom in, so you can read the numbers a little bit better, and then the menus there across the top. So this is a demonstration of Google Sheets on the PC. You can see the name of my file is Sharing Carefully Demo. And as we already altered this a little bit on the phone, here were some silage loads with some dates and times. There was the picture of my apple. Here are the manure loads, nothing in it yet, but in the PC. So I want to show how to add a comment. And so I could go to a cell here, insert a comment, and I'll just put here bunker number 1. So what we're saying is the silage on this day was going into bunker 1. The advantage of a comment is that it's there, it's a little orange triangle, but it doesn't clutter up what you're writing down. You can just go there and see what the comment is when you need it, but it's not cluttering. So that's a comment. Next, let's do the very important demonstration of sharing carefully. And so that's up here in the share button. At the moment, I have this sheet shared with only one person, and that person is Randy Trida. She's also behind the scenes making this whole webinar series happen. So I trust her with a lot of things. I guess you could share your sheets with the people you work with. If you trust your family, you could share it with them. If you didn't, then you don't have to. So anyway, right at the moment, only I and Randy can do anything, but she can edit it. I could change it so that she could only see it, or that she could only make comments and not actually edit it. But because I trust her so much, I'll just let her edit. Now, there are other options. I can, oops, sorry, clicked the wrong place. Let's go back. Let's add someone else. Megan Kuhn is also behind the scenes making this webinar happen. And so I could give her a note. Like this, I'm sharing a really important demo sheet with you. She will get an email note to that email address. I am making her also editor. I could give her particular attributes here, but when I hit send, now I'm going to share it with her. She doesn't have a Google account. This is kind of an alert you would get. Actually, I knew that. Megan uses a different Gmail address, so I won't give her email address away. But let's suppose that she did use her at Purdue email address in Google, then I would share it then this way. In this case, anyone with that email address or having the invitation could access it. So I'm going to cancel that. Never mind. Megan, I'll have to share with you on a different day. All right, but there is also the option of sharing it with anyone. And so you probably wouldn't do this because at the moment you would only restrict it to access to certain people. But in academia, we give things away a lot of times, data or some sign-up sheets and that sort of thing. And in that case, even with this demo file, anyone with the link, I would allow to see it. Maybe I would even allow them to comment on it. But I wouldn't let them edit it because then they might really mess up my sheet. So let's just go through that one more time. Share. It's important that you perhaps only go with a restricted control. And that way you get to see exactly who has access and what kind of privileges do they have in your spreadsheet. It's very important to share things carefully. One other feature I just wanted to show you while we're looking at Google Sheets real quickly, and that's under File, Version History. See Version History. This is a powerful tool. If you're familiar with things like track changes in Microsoft Word, this is kind of analogous to it. But let's just go there. And what you're now going to see is that I started this file once upon a time, just after noon on September 22nd. There was a version that looked something like this as soon as it populates. There was a different version just a little bit later, within a minute, I guess. Then there's a version on a different day, and a version later in that day, and a version even later in that day. And at any moment in time, you can go to one of these versions and either make a copy of what it was at that time, or you can name it like before the power went out or something like that. So you could name your versions. And of course, you can also then revert back to that version with the restore this version. So let's suppose you had a version, then things went wrong, people entered in things incorrectly, maybe you changed things that you didn't really need to change. You can restore the earlier version. Powerful tool. So anyway, I'm going to escape out of that. I don't want an old version. I just want the latest that I have. That's a little quick view of Sheets on the PC. There are lots of other communication pathways that you might use with your smartphone. Of course, you can text, either singly or as group text. You can send email. There's an app that's been around for about 7 or 8 years now called Slack. And lots of teams are starting to use Slack because it also essentially then becomes the archive of the communication. It's a little bit more searchable. You can have channels even within a team. So rather than one email thread that includes all the people, you can now have channels that include subsets of people. So regardless of whether you use texting, email, Slack, or some other platform, the use of the camera is a wonderful thing. You can do screen captures. I'm hoping you know how to do that on your phone. And I did a little bit of crowdsourcing with my students, and I would like to do that with you today too in the webinar. Let's use chat and crowdsource some ideas of how have you used these communication means to improve the effectiveness of you and your colleagues in the workplace. So some of the students that I had gave me these ideas. You can specifically identify broken things, locations of things, the status of a crop, which animal are we talking about. The photo is clear and it's quicker than actually typing a note often. An advantage of a photo sent to Slack or posted to a Trello board, we go back to that idea. An advantage of a photo taken with your smartphone is now it can't be lost. It's saved forever and ever. So even if you had a receipt from a purchase, or you have a ticket from dropping grain off at the elevator, you take a picture of that. You post it either as a text or in Slack or somewhere. Now you have a permanent record of that, that even if that piece of paper gets blown out of the cab, you still know what you had. So let's start filling chat. I would love to see some crowdsourcing of ideas of how you could use photos in these assorted communication pathways. The next tool I would like to introduce to you actually is an app that's specifically developed for agriculture. You can sort of tell from the icon there, the colors of it, that it is a product of Purdue Agriculture. It's part of our digital agriculture work. It's simply called the CONTXT App. It is what we call a progressive web app, so it actually runs in a browser, but it has the feel of a native app installed on your device. So let's go to the definition of context. You can see the definitions that are written there about the environment, the framework, and the event. It's the circumstances that form the setting for an event, a statement or idea, in terms of which it can be fully understood and assessed. CONTXT is an app that was developed to help you record the information that you're going to wish you had later when you're looking at yield maps or scouting reports. It helps you remember the things that you ought to be taking a note of. The advantage is instead of being in the dashboard notebook that gets lost or it's in the wrong place, it's going to store all that data in your Google Sheet. So that is the view of the app. It actually has several pages. The pages depend upon which operation that you might be performing. Now that may seem onerous to have the idea of, well, I've got to fill out pages of information. Well, actually is not, because it's a smart app in that it will auto-populate based on your last responses. For example, if I was spraying a certain chemical mix yesterday with a certain sprayer, then when I go to it the next time, it's going to auto-populate with those same things. It's going to auto-populate with me because it's on my phone. And so actually the filling out of the information should be very quick. So this is the purpose of the app. It's to provide those layers of information that often get lost or forgotten. There is a more detailed post in the Digital Ag Resources website that points to the app, and in the README file that comes with the app, there is also a very short video demonstrating how to use it. But I think you'll find it's an app that's so simple, it doesn't require training. The last tool of today's webinar is the notion of customized maps. We probably all have some experience with GPS type maps software on assorted platforms, but this one I want to point out to you is customizable. So on maps, you can put points, polygons, notes, actually multiple layers of points, polygons, and notes. And then just like in the other platforms of Sheets and Docs and Drive and Trello, you can control the privilege level of sharing of your maps. So you might share it relatively freely. It might be something that you only want 1 or 2 people to actually know where certain things are. So again, rather than me just talking about what it can do, let's do a short demonstration. This is the My Maps view in a browser on a computer. And first, let me just show you quickly a map from several years ago when we hosted a conference. I used a personalized map to communicate to conference registrants what the tours were going to be. So here was tour number 1, tour number 3, tour number 6. So you could click on there and see where is it. Here's a website for what they're going to see when they get to that place. So that one was, of course, shared very freely so people could get information that they would want to have. Let's create a new one. I'm going to call this one Junk for Demo. That way I'll remember to delete it later. It's not a map that actually means anything to me. And first thing let's do is let's go to where we are, somewhere in Lafayette, West Lafayette, Indiana. And let's suppose the other day I went out there and tried to go fishing here and didn't catch a thing. So I'm going to just label that spot, don't fish here, so that I remember that's not a good spot. And then, of course, if I went fishing and I found good things, then I'd label that as good spots. Just as an example of a polygon, let me just search for a zip code randomly, 44444. Happens to be up in Michigan. I'm going to change the base map so that this will make a little better sense to us here. So instead of sort of roads only, let's change it to a satellite view. Just wanted to get to the neighborhood. Let's just zoom in a little bit so I can draw a decent polygon. And let's see. Okay, there's an interesting field. Let's just suppose that this area drowned it out. It drowns out every year, but I want to kind of keep track of what drowns out in a particular year. So I'm going to draw a line and then add a line or shape and just sort of draw a polygon here. And let's suppose, well, this year it drowned that way. It's okay, flooded in 2020. All right, so there it is. Oops, I didn't do that right. So let's click in there. Well, for one thing, I didn't label it right, did I? 2020. And let's go into the polygon, edit it a little bit. There we go. So now I have, there's where it flooded. All right, so instead of getting, if I zoom out a little bit, you'll see, well, here is some dam information. Well, you don't want that kind of information. You want your own information. So you're going to draw a map of polygons that are of interest to you. So this is maps in the PC on the desktop view. What I've got here is maps view on my Android phone. So let's go into that Junk for Demo map. And then I want to find that flooded field in 2020. Turns out that I thought it was in Michigan, but it's actually in Ohio. You'd think I'd know where my land is, wouldn't you? Anyway, let's edit that one. The reason I'm doing this is so that I can quickly get to the field instead of trying to pan and find it. So there is that interesting field with the flooded part. So let's go to that field and then add a point. Add a new point. And I'm going to move it on the map here and label it right to there. Select this spot right there. And I'm going to label it enter field here. Because I would want people to know enter there, because if you enter somewhere else along the roadway, you run the risk of damaging your vehicle. So that's where you should enter. And while I'm here, let me also label, because I noticed this, that's why it's flooding there. I'm going to add a new line. I'm going to start that line there. This is all hypothetical, of course. And it goes to there. And hit the check mark. And we're going to label that likely broken tile, where it's got a bad connection or something, but it's not draining there and it should. So there, I've got it noted. Now I can share that with whoever needs to know this sort of information. We're pretty much done with today's webinar. We've covered lots of different inventive and intelligent ways to use your smartphone, including Trello, Google Sheets, a particular app called CONTXT. We covered the use of photos in various communication channels that you might regularly use anyway, and then customized maps. So let's go to some Q&A. I hope to see active chat. Let's all crowdsource some wonderful solutions to be more effective in what we do.